And I said, I want to stay for the work that I do on board the planet from my heart. And well, straight away, instantly, back into my body, open my eyes, the medical team saying, we've got a pulse, his eyes are open, he's breathing.
All right, welcome to another edition of the Living Boldly with Purpose podcast. I'm Dr. B. I am your host today, and always excited about the people that we get to interact with, the people that we get to learn about. Today I seem to be excited about technology because technology allows me to have this conversation that if this was 100 years ago, even if this was 50 years ago, 25 years ago, I don't believe we get to have this conversation. I was getting going in technology and the internet and, trying to figure it out. But there's no way we could do video in 2000 over the internet that would have had any kind of service that wasn't dial up or something like that, which would allow us to be able to have this conversation because Ash is in Australia. We were talking before the show just a little bit, just wondering, I was asked, we were talking about Disneyland and I asked if there was one in Australia, and he told me that there is not because their population is only 25 million. And I started thinking about that because I live in Denver now, but I lived in Southern California from, 1983 to 2009. I lived in Los Angeles for about 25 years there, and the population in Southern California was 25 million. That's just in, this little city that's in the southern part of California that had between San Diego and Los Angeles about 25 million, 23 million people there. And then the state had another, I think another 15 million, up north in the central California. And you guys almost have the same land mass as we have here. So I asked them, so you have no traffic? He said, no, I live in Sydney. There's like, 8 million of the population in there. But so it's just so fun to be able to talk to people and find out what the difference between purpose is in a country like Australia or the difference here in the United States. I just had a guest last week. Her name was Chantal, and she's doing a huge women's movement. And she was from Sydney as well, I believe. And she was telling me about her adventure, how that she was on a missions trip and met somebody in the Dominican Republic, and then came back home and said, "Mom, I'm moving to the United States." And what that upheaval and that could have been for her in her life to just uproot herself from Australia all the way to the United States. And we were able to talk about all those wonderful things that she's been able to do. The biggest thing that we talked about was diet and how much you guys eat so much better than we do, and how we are so sick here because we don't know how to eat. So I can tell that you're probably a super healthy man as you follow your purpose and the things that you do in life. And so wanted to just spend some time and find out a little bit about Ash, and then we will chop it up like we always do. It's so neat to, at least with the format of the show, is find out who a person is, not just what they do. We have it here, and I don't know how relationships are on the other side of the world, but we spend a whole lot of time defining ourselves by what we do and not who we are, which to me is so sad because I don't think I get to do what I do without being who I am and understanding who I am and doing a good job of doing that. And so I love in the show just to be able to kind of talk about that for a minute and just say, okay, I think what we do is super important, and I think it's something that we need to move forward. But at the same time, I also understand it's who we are that creates the guy, who we are that creates the person that makes a difference in others' lives. And the things that I try to work on is how can I help people become the people that they are in order to do what they were planning to do on this planet, or why God put them on this planet. And so, Ash, can't wait to have a conversation with you and talk about all the wonderful things. I see a bird on your wall in the back, which is I can't tell if it's an eagle or a hawk or some kind of just amazing bird that just tells me that we're going to have some fun today. So go ahead and tell us your story, where you're from, which and obviously I know where you're from. I just told that, but where you're from originally, I'm assuming it's Australia, but what that looked like compared to your life right now.
Thanks, Dr. B. Yeah, the bird behind me, it's a Egyptian Lena falcon, and
Okay.
a friend of mine painted it, and I saw she put it on Facebook that, she often puts her artwork up there, and I thought, oh, I really like that one. And this was back in 2012, and I thought, okay, and it was the first time I'd ever bought myself a birthday present, and I
Oh,
thought,
nice.
I'm going to buy it for myself as a birthday present.
Yeah.
And so I messaged her and I bought it and I paid for it. And she said, okay, I'll drop it off. And when she dropped it off, she told me what it was. And she's, this is the Egyptian sign, a symbol of power and healing. And I
Really?
had decided that year. So that was the first year that I had a theme. So instead of doing New Year's resolutions, a friend of mine told me that they do themes.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, and I thought, okay. And my health was very, very poor in 2012. I had PTSD, I had depression, I had adrenal fatigue, and so life was very, very, very hard.
Wow.
And people looking externally in, it looked like I had an amazing life, right? Like I lived in a nice house and had great friends, and I was playing in a reasonably successful band and all these things. But on the inside, it was every day was so hard. So I invested in my power and healing theme, and naturally a picture came to me that was about power and healing, and so that picture's been with me for a long time, and working with many clients. When I work with clients, I'll often sit on the lounge here and have a camera facing me that way. And yeah, that symbol of power and healing, it works on them as well. And I find that birds are such a great symbol of
Oh,
how of freedom, and the
yeah.
bird's eye view, where we can look down on our life from a bird's eye view and see what's happening. So that's the story of how that one came into my life.
Cool. I'm so glad I asked about it. That
Haha.
Oh my gosh, that's neat. And I've never heard of an Egyptian falcon. I didn't know that that was such a thing. But I mean, just from the picture she drew, what an amazing, animal and bird that we get to that I'm sure I'll be looking at this whole show and just thinking.
Haha.
Now I know that it even means power and healing. And it was funny. I just got off of a podcast, and I told you it went a little bit long with a gentleman a doctor from the United States that has figured out health and wellness, and he's a chiropractor and has pretty much figured out how to reverse type 2 diabetes. And I have type 2 diabetes. And so as a result, this is just one of those healing days for me where I'm like,
Oh, brilliant.
oh my gosh, this is so cool. And I get to talk about, your practice and the things that you do and how you help people. So what an amazing, I'm so glad I woke up this morning and I get to be part of life again as we start over. So
Mm.
again, yeah, go ahead and tell us your story, but thank you for that. That was so uplifting and important to me.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. V. Amazing where a podcast can lead you, right? Just running
No,
a podcast and talking to people that you're interested in it, and it navigates your experience through life. So
yeah.
so my experience through life, um, my childhood, I grew up with loving parents, and as a baby, I was adopted, and so I was blessed to land with some parents who really wanted a baby to take care of and love. And there was it was a very free childhood, right? It was pre-surveillance cameras, pre-mobile phones tracking where you
Mhm.
were, and I would just jump on my bike and head off and go ride places and leave in the morning and get home just before dinner at dark. And that's how life was. No one knew where I was all day, and I loved it. And there's still part of me that still loves that, where it's going adventuring in nature. But in so my life was we'll put it in the normal bracket, right? I became a school teacher and I was very passionate about helping the children with the greatest challenges. And at one point, I was married, and my then wife, so ex-wife, we had a child together, but she was stillborn.
Oh.
And at the moment of her coming out, right, we didn't the doctors didn't know she'd gone, she'd passed. And when she came out, it was like my whole life just flashed before my eyes. It was like slow motion images. And my ex-wife and I were looking at each other, and I was thinking, oh, this is love. This is love. And was just hoping that somehow this situation wasn't real.
Hmm.
And there was PTSD that came from that event. I won't go into the details, right? Because I'm very, very conscious of activating other people's own trauma or things like that. But I walked away from that experience with a greater appreciation for life, but locked into my nervous system was this trauma. And I didn't know it was locked in, right? I didn't have any sort of emotional awareness. I didn't know how to navigate emotions, or that, you know, there's so many things around awareness and consciousness and emotions. But over a period of about 3 years, I declined,
Hmm.
right? I just gradually, I was sleeping less and less, and eventually I had 8 months where I hardly slept at all. I was I look now, like, how can I think that was normal? But I just thought it was normal to vomit before you go to work. Right? Like the anxiety was so high
Hmm.
that, I just would go, oh, that's strange. Okay, well, I'll just pull myself up and go to work. And eventually I got to this point where I couldn't keep going. Right. I had this moment one day where, so for most of my life, I was a surfer, and I was sitting in the ocean, and I was thinking about my life and where it was heading, and I wasn't happy with my work. And I saw this seagull fly overhead, and I thought, he doesn't know where he's going. Like, okay, I'm
So you
quitting my
did.
job. And so the next day I went in and quit my job.
Really?
Uh,
It's Eagle.
yeah. Yeah, and I thought, okay, who knows? Who knows where I'm going?
Yeah.
And 2 weeks later, I was in a mental health clinic with actually, catatonic psychosis, where I wasn't even able to sign my name. I was
Really?
that sick that my wife had to sign my name for me to be admitted to the clinic. And so that led me down this path of, you know, firstly discovering meditation when I was in the mental health clinic,
Okay.
really deep, dark depression, and really learning that, oh, okay, I'm responsible for my emotions. I can change things. But it was very, very difficult because of the physiology that the trauma had with not sleeping, and that trauma had really impacted my physiology. So it took me about 6 years to recover from that physiology deficit, shall we say. So adrenal fatigue, and the for me, the antidepressants, they didn't work
Mm.
because they diagnosed me as being bipolar because I hadn't slept for 8 months, and there was a history in my genetic family of bipolar. um However, so those kind of things didn't work, but I had this voice in my head that just kept saying, go natural, go natural, go natural. And so eventually I got to this point where I found a natural health doctor. I went off the antidepressants with support. Um, and the natural things we were doing, they worked for me. And of course, counseling came in. And so there was a lot of therapy. Uh, some of it didn't work, some of it did. So it was like navigating, okay, what works for me, what doesn't work for me. And just this voice, just keep going, keep going. I had this voice in my head, just keep going. And then in 2016, so in 2015, I had a back injury surfing, and I had a voice that came to me before that injury. And the surf was very big, and I was standing on the edge of the surf, and I was looking at the surf, and there was nobody else out, and it was early morning, just before the sun came up, and I was like, "This is what I love, right? I love when the surf's like that." And this voice in my head, like it was like God's voice said to me, "If you go surfing today, you will hurt your back."
Really?
Yeah, and I just remember so clearly, and it was possibly the dumbest thing I've ever done, but also one of the most transformational moments ever. Where I was looking at the surf and I thought, bring it on. And because I didn't like my job, right? And I didn't want to go back to work. And so I'd been on holidays, and so I started paddling out. I dove through the first wave, and it's quite big surf, right? So it's quite powerful. The second wave I went to go through, and I literally popped two discs in my back. So uh, yeah, and so I paddled back in with one arm because I just could hardly
Couldn't, yeah,
move,
there's
and the
no
pain
way.
was excruciating. And I got into the shore, and I was standing in near deep water, holding onto my board, and I couldn't walk. I was just stuck. I couldn't even take a step. And so somebody helped me up the beach. It took about 45 minutes just to get up this small beach. And then that led to back surgery. And during the surgery, so I tried, being a bit of a natural health person by then, after experiencing for me the benefits of natural health. I tried everything I could to repair my back, didn't work. The discs continued to degenerate. And so okay, right, I need spinal fusion. And
Mhm.
so I went in for spinal fusion, and during the surgery, the surgeons tore a vein, and they weren't aware they'd torn a vein. And
No,
yeah, so they stitched me back up and sent me back to the ward. And during that night, I was in excruciating
of
pain.
course. There's no way.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh
yeah.
gosh.
So is your background, medical doctor? Is that your
I am not a
background?
medical doctor. I'm a doctor of philosophy,
Hmm.
but I have a fusion in my back. So I know
Ah.
exactly. But mine wasn't, well, I had two back surgeries. The first back surgery, it was a disc, it was a bulging disc, and they exploded the disc. And because I had been an athlete and that kind of stuff. And I was just in just as much pain after the surgery as I was. Then I went and found myself a athletic doctor that worked on hockey teams. And figured if you can fix somebody who plays hockey, you can fix me. And
Hmm.
I had a great experience because that was, I think, '96 when I had my fusion. L5S1 has been
Hmm.
fused, and there's nothing I can't do. So,
Yeah.
but I'm relating to you with much empathy, and the let's go for it. Like, hey, I'm going to ignore the things. I want natural heal. So your story is so part of my life that I'm just like this is, except for some of the trauma that you've experienced. I haven't had to experience, but at the same time, I'm just this is so that's why I'm kind of feeling for you because I understand back surgery oh so well, and I can imagine what it was like to have a vein and then not notice it, and then you trying to figure out how this isn't right. This isn't
Mm.
the way this is supposed to be. Because they told me when I get out of my surgery, I'm supposed to be able to start walking and I'm gonna walk out of here in about 48
Yeah.
hours or 24 hours, right? And there's no
Yeah.
way because they got to go back in. I'm assuming. I can't wait to hear your rest of the story. So, yes,
Yeah.
please.
Well, what happened was the next morning after the surgery, the physio came in to get me up for rehab. And I sat on the edge of the bed and I looked down at my thigh, and my thigh was about twice the size of what it normally is. And I said to him, my leg's not normally like this. And he was very young. He was straight out of college. And he said, oh, you'll be okay. Up you get. And so I stood up and I collapsed.
Of
And
course. Oh man, he
yeah,
didn't even notice it, and the nurses don't notice at night that your leg just grew twice the size of what it was when you came in.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And in my lower body was just full of blood.
Of course.
And so what happened then was I wasn't able to breathe. He hit the red emergency button next to the side of the bed. The emergency team came in with the siren going, as in like, throughout the ward. Um, and they started to attach the oxygen mask, and I was just bathed in this cold, cold sweat. Like my
Mhm.
whole body was just sweat, cold, cold. And I
Yeah.
was very aware of what was happening. And so they were trying to attach the ECG monitors, and they wouldn't stick because of the sweat. And I could hear them saying that, and eventually they got them attached, and they started talking about my blood pressure, and I could hear them saying he's not breathing, we don't have a pulse. And they started saying to me, stay with us, Ash, stay with us. And I was very aware of where everybody was in the room. Like there
Hmm.
was like this hyper awareness happened. And I could
Hmm.
see the physio over in the left hand corner just pale. And I'm thinking, oh, I saw him very pale. And by then one of the surgeons had come in, and there was, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'll be okay. I'll be okay. The eternal optimist. Yeah, I'll be all
Hmm.
right. I'll get through this. This is all right. And then I had this moment where I heard them say his blood pressure's 52 on 36.
Oh, no, no, no.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Which,
that means
which,
you're not pretty much alive. You're
yeah,
just,
yeah. Like there's virtually there's nothing happening there. There's no blood
yeah.
moving around the body. And and I thought, oh, this is dying. I'm dying. And
Hmm.
they were saying, keep your eyes open, Ash. And it was getting harder and harder and harder to stay awake. And eventually I just couldn't keep my eyes open anymore. And so my experience was what happened was, people say, oh, did you see the light and things like that? Mine was the opposite. I went into this blackness,
Just total darkness.
except it was like if you drop a pebble in a pond and ripples go out. I
Hmm.
became the ripples, right?
Okay.
I I was the ripples were me. It's a bit difficult to explain, but it was like there was no separation, and I was just going out and out and out in all these directions in infinitely.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, this is dying. Oh, okay. This is what dying's like. And there was so many things that I was aware of in every moment. It was like if you think of bandwidth on internet, right? It was like my bandwidth just got blown up, and I could download all these things. And so one of the things was like, wow, I'm still able to think. How is that possible? I've blacked out, but I'm still thinking. Oh, and then it was, oh, and I'm still myself. Actually, I feel more like myself than ever before. It was like this. So I got to experience, people talk about your true nature or your true essence or that who we truly are.
Hmm.
It was like I experienced that without the conditioning of my life. And so the
Okay.
personality structure was kind of gone, but it was just me, this essence of me. Like we all have this unique fingerprint. And
Hmm.
so I experienced that. And then I started to say, I want to stay.
So you wasn't
And
ready to go. You're like, no,
no,
I got way more to go. I got more life that I want. You're not going to take me now. Oh my God.
well, I felt very powerless, right? I felt
Uh-huh.
like this thing was
Like you could do
happening.
anything. Okay.
Yeah. And it was, but I just said, I want to stay. And then I said, well, at that point I had a different partner, and I said, I want to stay for my partner. And the ripples just kept going out and out and out. And then I said, but I want to stay for the kids. And we had a blended family, and just still going out and out. And then I felt this warmth, and I said, I want to stay for the work that I do on Walk the Planet from my heart. And boom, straight away, instantly, back into my body, open my eyes, the medical team saying, we've got a pulse, his eyes are open, he's breathing, and level 11 pain because I'd lost so much blood. It was just pressing on my organs, insane pain. And I started moaning, I started screaming because of the pain, and I was alive. There was also this element, like the duality of life, right? Like
Yeah. Oh my God.
the good and the hard at the same time. But just so grateful to be alive.
Were they doing like CPR and that kind of stuff on you to keep you alive, or what were they doing? That
I,
was
I
had you got that far down where that's what they were having to work on you that way, and then
I actually don't know.
okay,
Right. Like so and it's actually no one's ever asked me that question. And I haven't asked that question myself.
okay.
Right. But
I'm just thinking, this is what did they have to do to
mm-hmm.
make sure that you on their side of it. I mean, I can see
Yeah.
your brain and your mental side of it, but I'm thinking they must be doing
Mm,
something as much as they could, unless they were just watching the whole thing. As it was like, we lost him, so
yeah.
we'll just wait till he's done. But, oh my
Yeah.
gosh,
No, I imagine they were putting in saline solution to prop up the blood
hmm
levels. When I spoke to the surgeon a few weeks later, he said, "Oh, we weren't worried. You gave us a bit of a fright, but we always knew you were going to be okay."
yeah, right,
Yeah, yeah. I had a conversation with one of my friends who's a nurse who's worked in emergency for 30 years, and he was like, "No, no, no. You went as close as you can go."
yeah.
So yeah, so extraordinary.
Oh my gosh! So now they have to they have to go back in and repair the vein that they clipped? I'm assuming that was probably the next piece of that is going in and fixing your back or whatever, and then how long was the recovery? Now that you're alive
Mhm.
and you've made it, and they got to fix that before you're able to leave the hospital. Did you end up staying there for a long time, or you were just
I
good to
so
go?
there was a lot of complications because I'd lost so much blood. They were hoping that the blood vessel would repair itself,
Oh,
which
okay,
over time it did.
okay,
But because there was so much blood in my body, I had blood clots. I could hardly walk, so I had a blood clot in my leg, a very severe one. It actually went from my abdomen down to my ankle, just one clot. So now that vein's permanently blocked, which it was a big thing to overcome. It took me 8 months to get back to full-time work. But I had this I had this thing in my mind where it's like, oh, I went through this experience for a reason. I
Mhm.
wasn't living from my heart.
Yeah,
And 3 weeks after I got out of hospital, the relationship I'd been in, we split up. And
okay,
and so my daughter and I, we moved out, we started life again. It was like the universe just went, okay,
flipped.
you want to live from your heart? Guess what? Start from zero. Zero health. I had very few possessions and life just started again. And so the whole thing all the time was, oh, what does it mean to live from my heart? What's the work? What's the work? I thought I was living from my heart.
Yeah, and I'm really curious about the identity that you held for yourself during this time because we think of our identity and who we are and who we're supposed to show up as, on a daily basis. And so you've been through, the trauma of a baby. You've been through the trauma of, all the things that have gone wrong, relationships that aren't working. All of a sudden, you're going to live from the heart, but that requires a whole new identity, right? It requires a whole new way that when you stare in the mirror, when you get up, you're looking at a different person. I'm assuming
Mm,
that and now you go, okay, I've been this guy for this many years. Who's this other person, and how do I be it? Right?
yeah. Yeah, and those questions they drive our experience in life, right? Like
Mhm.
people go, okay, how do I get this? We have a picture in our head where we want to go or who we want to be, and then the questions drive us towards that. That's for me. It was like, okay, how do I live from my heart? What's the work? And the first thing was, okay, I need to get healthy. And so it
Mhm.
was literally step by step. Okay, I've got to get this IV out of my arm. I've got to get this catheter out. I've got to take the first step. I've got to walk around the hospital ward. And it was just like, okay, what's the next step? Oh, okay, I have to find somewhere to live. Okay, I have to start feeding myself better because I was so sick. It was so hard to prepare meals, right? And it was just like next step, next step. So the health came first. Then it was like, okay, what's it mean to live from my heart? And I started doing personal work and going to retreats and learning about because the other question was, well, what was stopping me doing it before the near-death experience?
Hmm.
Ah, okay. It was my past that was in front of me. Like the past was literally blocking who I could become. And so I had to go and deal with the past. And that took me years, right? And of course, I'm a human being. The past can still come up in front of me and there be
Of
lessons.
course it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so when like I'm thinking like, are you? This is probably a silly question, but I think like a Rocky movie when you're going through your health journey, and are you hearing music in your head like I'm
Mm.
doing, like I'm getting ready to get myself back in shape? But then like you said, the living from your heart portion of it, like before you said I didn't do it before, like, and I think people would want to know, like, how do you just go to retreats? Like, do you still have to work? Are you making enough money? Are these free retreats? Are they, because I think that, and how do you have the time to do it? Or have you just
Hmm.
made a decision, this is important, so I'm going to do this no matter what it takes? 'Cause I think that's where people get stuck sometimes on why they
Hmm.
don't go through and do the things they know they need to do because they think they
Mm.
can't.
Yeah, and identity ties into that so much, right? It's like,
Mhm.
okay, the perception that our identity is connected to a tribe and what people think, and if we change our identity, then what will they think of us? But for me, I had this profound experience, and I couldn't deny that I had the experience. It was like, okay, all right, my purpose is to live from my heart. So whatever it takes. And for a long time, it was very challenging because the amount of hours I could work were reduced,
Mhm.
but the rewards from doing that personal work, that deep personal work, it was extraordinary. And along the way at one of the retreats, I had a connection with a woman, and then we connected 3 months later, and we had a long distance relationship for 3 years, and we've been married for 5 years now.
That's so cool. Now
Mm.
your daughter is part of your life at this point too, right? Because
Hmm.
you guys had to go move out and move to somewhere else. How are you able to, in your state, living from your heart, provide for her in a different way than you had been doing it before? Because it sounds like, hey, you've changed everything about you, but she's still her, right? She had to
Hmm.
bring her with her, and she's like,
Yeah.
"Where's my dad? Or is it
Mm.
better? Or is this worse? Or how did that relationship change and grow as a result of this near death experience?"
Great question, Dr. B. She actually got more of her dad, right? Because the layers started to come off, right?
Mhm.
And as that happened, I was rapidly growing an understanding around human psychology and physiology and managing emotions and being able to hold space for those things. So that came into my parenting naturally. And so my my thing had always been I could never show her that things were challenging sometimes. I always had to be the stoic dad, right? And what I realized was that me doing that, it actually makes her emotions as if there's something wrong with them. And so I became more comfortable saying to her, I'm just feeling a bit flat today because, this happened. And it wasn't about putting my emotional baggage on her. It was just about honesty and then being able to hold her through her experiences. And so we have a beautiful, beautiful relationship. And though that sort of 4 or 5 years there, it was just an amazing foundation to be able to lay down in our relationship.
That's so cool. Maybe you can, because I know you can remember what it used to be like. What does it mean to be a dad? From, because we all know our kids need dads and they need moms and they need those great relationships. But what has it meant to you to be able to be her dad before and then after? What's that emotion like?
Hmm. The best, just the best. It's even before my near death experience, I just loved being a dad so much. It was just, so what's such a gift. And before I became a dad, I thought I'm going to give my child unconditional love. I
Mhm.
didn't realize that I'd be getting unconditional love back.
Okay. That's so
Yeah.
good.
And it was like, no matter how much I messed up, she still loved me. And that was humbling. And on top of that, with all the depression and PTSD, there were times I didn't know if I was going to survive the day. I literally didn't know if,
Hmm.
there was a green rope in my van, and I've also been a musician, right? And I used to tie the music gear down with this green rope. There was 3 months I couldn't look at the rope because I was so afraid what I would do with it. And it was my love for my daughter that I was like, I can't do that to her. I can't do that to her. And I probably wouldn't have made that. That was around 2011, 2012. I probably wouldn't have made through if it wasn't for the love of my daughter.
Yeah, that says it all. That says it all. What it means to be a dad
Mm,
when you would stop something that you really wanted to happen because of the love for another, which is
mm,
huge.
yeah.
All right, so we're now to the, you're kind of changing. You now get married to this amazing lady that you had this relationship with at the retreat. What has life been like since you've been able to have this new relationship, incredible relationship with your daughter? What's life been like?
Extraordinary. And that has come from, so one of my insights around living from my heart was living life my way, trusting myself. I had to do that. And that's what I didn't do in the past. So I, w- I was what you'd call a martyr, right? In relationships, things like that, where I would give away all my energy, right? I would give away my money. I was constantly putting myself into a deficit. And it meant that even though I cared about people and wanted to help them, life was very hard and it was very hard to help them. So one of the flips was, okay, I need to take care of myself. I need to learn to say no, right? I need to stop living out of obligation. And classic example around the surfing and hearing the voice in my head. I actually need to start listening to that voice that pops into my head every now and then.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so that was like me connecting to a greater guidance. And was like, okay, I'm not the expert on my life. I need to start listening to that voice that drops in every now and then and tells me how to live my life. And so that meant that things like I changed where I lived, and the hardest thing was that to continue expanding in life, I had to leave my daughter with her mother in Brisbane, which is 600 miles away. And I moved to Sydney, and now married, and the my daughter and I are still very close, right? And but it just meant life had to be different. It was
Mhm.
like, okay, I had this near death experience. Life is now different. I'm not the same person that I was before that. And for me to try and keep living life as that person from the past, that creates suffering. So I need to step into the future. And as I did these things, friends started to come to me to ask for help. And I thought, oh, I hate advice giving. So I did a coaching course. I was like, okay, oh, coaching, you just ask people questions and help them do what it is they want to do rather than me
Yeah.
being the expert on their life. Oh, phew, I don't have to be the expert. And so I did that, and I ended up, it was one of those days where the voice dropped in. I remember I'd been a school teacher for 22 years, and I'd wanted to leave teaching in the second year, and I had stuck with it,
21
right?
years.
Talk about the martyr and the obligation and things like that. And there was one day I was driving away from work, and I thought, I'm actually content with my work. And then that infuriating voice came in and it said, it's time to leave. It's time to do something bigger. And I just thought, oh, you're kidding. You're kidding. I literally was said out loud, you are kidding. What? I just got to this point where I'm content with this
Um,
work.
yeah.
And so over the next 6 months, the workload just went through the roof in that job. And it got to the point where it was, I had to work 7 days a week to do that job. And I just was like, I hear the message. I'm out. And so 2020, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go play music professionally, which I'd been doing all through my teaching career, taking time off and playing music and coming back to teaching. And then COVID pandemic happened and every gig was cancelled within 1 week. Just, months of gigs gone.
Mhm.
And the coaching emerged. I was like, okay, well, how am I going to make a living right now? Okay, coaching. And since then, it's been a magical, what have we been in now? 5 years, 5 years of flourishing and helping people to live from their heart and create what it is they want in their life. It's been extraordinary.
And so your coaching program is pretty well built around that living from the heart process that you figured out, and you're helping people do the same thing, and change their lives in ways that they can start living from the heart. Is that the
Yeah, yeah. And everyone has their own lens on what that looks like.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, well, what's your lens? That's the right lens. And if it's not the right lens, you're going to find out through taking action. You're going
Yeah,
to find
yeah.
out through, just taking the next step. And so it's a big, big piece is people learning to trust themselves.
Wow. Yeah. How big trust is in, not only in our relationships outside of ourselves, but if we can't trust ourselves, we truly can't trust anything that's out
Yeah.
there until we get to that point. When I think about like the spiritual part of your journey, or the invisible world, and I don't know, maybe do you believe in a creator or a higher power, or what is it that allowed you, that voice that you talk to? Because I'm thinking about the voice that says, I need to go surfing. Well, I'm going to hurt my back if I do. But if you had listened to that voice, your life would be nowhere near as good as it is right now.
True, true. And I feel like when I said to the universe, when I said, or God, or that whoever that being was, right, that came in and said to me, if you go surfing today, you'll hurt your back. When I said bring it on, I think they were like rub their hands together and go, oh yeah, let's just open up the can on this guy. Let's see what happens. Guess what? You just stepped into this new life.
Yeah, and I kind of see that as God saying, "Wait a minute, okay, so we are, yeah, we're gonna take you through it. We're not gonna destroy you totally, but we're gonna take you through it because we got plans for you. We have
Yeah.
the people that you're gonna help." And one of the things that I love about living in purpose, or believing you live in purpose, is I don't believe you can do it without helping others. And
Hmm.
so many people try to live in purpose based on this is what it is, what's in it for me, but they don't truly get to live in purpose until they figured out what's in it for the people I get to serve. What are
Mm-hmm.
your thoughts about it now that you're in this coaching thing, and
Hmm.
you're helping people, and you're serving people through an experience that none of us want, but you got to live through it, and go through what it takes to get out of it. What's your thoughts on living in purpose and serving others?
It's an interesting one, purpose.
Hmm.
There's, and of course, it's different for a lot of people. My experience was because I was that martyr that would give everything away,
Hmm.
my my purpose was to come back to myself first,
Yes.
take care of myself so then I could assist others. Yeah, so I didn't have that foundation of self-care.
Hmm.
So when I came back and whereas now I have this great foundation of self-care. My health's amazing. I'm happy. My relationships are amazing. So from there I get to choose how I do my purpose in the world. Yeah. And so something I do now too is I work with heart-centered professionals so that their messaging on their social media, because through telling my near-death experience and the work that I do and just sharing things on social media, my social media took off. And it's last year there was over 2 million views on TikTok, and that really helps a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
Just sharing like this podcast, right? We don't know the impact of this conversation on people that are listening, but it does have an impact. And so life has been about, okay, my purpose is to help people. I listen to the guidance that comes and I do what that says, not what my tiny little brain thinks is the right way, right? It's if I listen to guidance, my suffering goes down. Yeah. But it takes trust. It takes trust. It's like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen, but you told me to do this. You told me to help these heart-centered people. That's what I'm going to do. And of course, life flourishes.
And something you just said just hit me in a way when I think about purpose, because you talked about being a martyr and being and giving and doing all these things that sometimes we say that's the purpose. My purpose is to give, but the I guess the thoughts behind that were not as a purpose as I'm serving others. I'm doing this out of I'm trying to find a way to feel good about myself. So the only way I think I can feel good about myself is to give, and that's really not working in purpose.
Mm.
That's not serving others. That's finding a way to serve yourself through the martyrdom or whatever that word is that I'm looking for. That just says, you know what, I'm going to do this selfless act, and that's going to help me find my purpose. Well, I don't I, I don't know how you get to that point where you say, if I give everything, then I'm okay. Because if you
Yeah.
give everything, right, there's nothing left to give. There's nothing left to help people with. You don't have the ability to serve anybody when you don't have anything in your tank to be able to serve people with. Kind of like driving a car, right? Where you run out of gas and go, well, I'm going to drive these. You know, I want to drive these people to the airport, but I can't because I don't have any gas. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, totally. And so for me, one of the important things, like, like our language really shapes our experience
Yeah.
and what we do, changing the word from giving to sharing, right?
Mm,
So
like that.
now I don't give everything away. I share my gifts, right? I share my work. And so, sharing is, here's a piece for you. I'm keeping a piece for me. That makes the sustainability, right? And that sustainability continues and we build up momentum, it snowballs, so it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's this foundation of health, there's this foundation of connection, there's this foundation of purpose that can grow, right? We can give more value to the world because we're sharing, not giving away.
Giving away. I love it. Well, and I think of all the, the nonprofits that are out there that are asking us to give, and then if you and you find one that you love and that you can be a part of, and that you are that, but you got to almost even share with them as well, because if all
Mm,
you're doing is that act of, okay, yeah, I know I'm supposed to give, so I'm just going to give you some money, but you're not participating in that, then it just seems like it's there's an emptiness that would be inside of you for doing it,
mm,
that way. Whereas what you're saying is, no, I'm going to share, and I'm going to share at the capacity that I'm able to do, and that's where the impact is going to come. And that would come from the heart, right? If I'm sharing from my
mm,
heart, I think
mm,
maybe some of that giving is just from the brain. Logically,
mm.
this is what somebody told me I'm supposed to do, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not really living from your heart.
Yeah.
Are there certain, like, as you've learned over the years now that you've been able to live from the heart, are there certain things that you would say, hey, I want to be a heart-centered person, or would you say heart-centered professionals is an organization that's there? Are there two or three different ways to share from the heart that that that's what you're doing?
Great question. There's there's a law called the law of fair exchange, right?
Okay.
It's like a universal law,
Hmm.
and that is, when there's a fair exchange, things are sustainable, right? And they can continue across time. The longer they go across time, the more impact you can have. Yeah. So, for example, if I'm passionate about a particular charity and I see that the charity is doing good work and that the people I want to help or care about are being helped by that charity, there's the fair exchange,
Just fair
right?
exchange. Yeah.
It could be that I go down and I help out at the charity, and I get connection as well. There's the fair exchange, right? Whereas if I'm giving to some cause, but there's not some sort of return in that, that I feel like, oh, okay, this is connecting with people, or even in a work arrangement, right? That if we're working with somebody and we feel like we're being underpaid, guess what? The law of fair exchange dictates that you probably won't stick with that job, right? Because you're doing the work, but then you feel like you're not being paid fairly. So the
Yeah,
law of fair exchange will kick in and you will move on, or the universe is going to squeeze you, right? And increase your suffering so that you do move on to something that is a fair
it
exchange.
is a fair exchange. And we're searching for those fair exchanges through everything that we do, I'm assuming, and it's bouncing off as we go, okay, this is not it, this is it, this is not it. And some people like yourself before your experience was all like so off skewed on what that fair exchange is. Like you go to work that you don't like, you have
Hmm.
relationships that you don't like. There's nothing that's happening in your life that feels like a fair exchange. And
Yeah.
then how do we come out of that then if we're searching and we're not finding that law of fair exchange as we're searching? Is there something we can do to, I guess, help us find it quicker, or is it just
Yeah. Do you want to be forced to take action through suffering, or do you want to be forced to take action through your inspiration? Yeah. So it's like, okay, this isn't working for me. What's a micro action I can take? For example, I could just jump on my phone, look up a job app and see what jobs are around, right? I could literally just book in for some training. Yeah. Even if I have very limited income, I can go on YouTube and start getting trained for free.
oh my gosh. The thing that just popped into my head as you're telling me this is, what do people do instead of that micro adjustment that will allow you to be educated to get you out of it? Our micro adjustment is, I'm going to be entertained. I'm going to find a distraction. I'm going to find
Mm,
a substance. I'm going to find something that will stop the pain of what that is when I'm suffering. And I'm just seeing people in the restaurant, or just or wherever
mm,
they're at, scrolling through entertainment videos that never, all they do is distract you from what it really takes to move forward, and try
mm.
to encourage people to find those micro adjustments that can bring you over into the inspiration, instead of just taking you deeper into the, and I think a little bit about that deeper into the suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. And as human beings, we have two things. We have
Mhm.
time, we have attention,
Yeah.
right? Are you going to spend your time attending to things that don't make your life better? Or are you going to make a conscious choice that actually I'm going to focus on this? And and if someone's listening to this podcast, they've made that choice, right? They're
Yeah.
like, okay, I want to live boldly with purpose. Okay, I'm listening to this podcast because I want to change my life. And so from there, it's like, okay, you're getting things from this podcast. What are you going to integrate into your life? You've got time, you've got attention. What are you going to do with your time and attention?
Time's a limited resource, and we only have so much of it, and so
Yeah.
that attention becomes so important. Man, I want to respect your time, but this is so good. And so, is there anything that I missed that you want to share with us today that we can leave? I got to listen to this over and over again, because there's so much that you impacted into our short time together. Oh man, amazing! Thank you for being on today. But yeah, go ahead, and any last thoughts or things that you would want to make sure our audience hears and knows, and uh, things that they can get to help.
Thanks, Dr. B. Um, so if somebody's resonating with what I'm talking about, they want to learn more, there's my social media. On my website, they can do an inner critic quiz. We were talking about identity, right? They can do this 3-minute quiz, and it's free. They get a profile for 6 aspects of the inner critic, like self-judgment, self-worth, perfectionism, self-sabotage. They can see how they rank for those things and how they're impacting them. And they also get strategies on how they can move forward from those things. And there's other free resources there. So if you want to make changes, right, one of the things is knowing your strengths and skills. The more connected you are to your strengths and skills, the more you know what your next step is. So there's a free resource there where people can identify their strengths and skills. And other than that, you can contact me through my website if you want to get in touch. And I'm very happy if someone's interested in exploring what it would be like to work with me as a coach, then they can book a free connection call through my website.
What's your website again?
It's ashperrow.com.
Ashperrow.com. Wow. And just thinking, like, you're famous now. You got all these views, but you are reachable. You are touchable. That if you're truly looking for somebody that can help you find what it means to live from the heart, I think you're remiss in not contacting Ash and not taking the quiz and not understanding who you are, especially if you are that person who's feeling like I'm suffering and I'm not living this life of intention. You can see the joy and the happiness of how Ash is just excited to get up every single day. The power of the Egyptian falcon that is part of his life. And so please, contact him, get on the website. I hope I'm going to do a follow up. Maybe it's 6 months in a year. We'll get back together and talk again. This has been such a great conversation for me. For the listeners who are saying, "Hey, I'm loving these interviews of folks that you're interviewing, Brian," go ahead and subscribe button and the YouTube stuff that you do in order, the thumb ups and comment. I would love to hear some comments of some of these shows. I'm more of a show that doesn't have a lot of comments, because how do you comment on somebody's life and say, well, no, his life isn't the way it's supposed to be, right? Because we're just this honest conversation. This is your life. It's like, no, but I would love to have them. If these things are helping you, please let us know. Don't forget, to me, you're God's greatest gift, and He loves you if you allow Him to. Any one last thought, Ash, before we close it down?
Trust yourself, take the next step.
Oh, I love it. Trust yourself. Take the next step. All right, you guys have a wonderful day. We'll see you on the next one and talk to you soon.